4 long years ago, Chris Straub, creator of other popular horror/horror adjacent works like Candle Cove, unveiled to unwitting viewers on YouTube a nightmare the likes of which hadn't ever been seen before. Yet, with that being said, most who viewed this anomaly were familiar with its unique horrors, somewhere within the deep recesses of their minds. This, viewers,
is Local 58. Local 58 is an analog horror web series that had its beginnings in 2014, with Straub having held out the first 3 videos for years before finally publishing them on Halloween 2017. Many would say that this mysterious and horrifying narrative crafted the very basis of what we now know to be modern analog horror. The question I've asked myself after the fluctuating waves of imitations and reinventions that have followed is, does this series hold up in a modern setting? Is this truly the horror masterpiece everyone claims it is? Or is it just a means to an end? A catalyst for greater distortions on reality, and nothing more? Before we determine whether or not the series still stands as a good example of analog horror, we have to define a precedent of the genre to compare to. Analog horror, for the uninitiated, can be defined as a subgenre of horror that grounds itself within the boundaries of a pre-digital medium. TV broadcasts, VHS tapes, etc., you get the gist. Analog horror uses the restrictions of these different mediums to present unique scenarios previously unexplored in horror, ranging from more interpersonal found footage narratives like the Blair Witch Project to far more vague ventures like Gemini Home Entertainment. I often find that a good distinction between classic and modern media in this genre stems from the level of intimacy it has with the viewer, with early examples like Marble Hornets presenting themselves in a more human and personal light. The audience can physically connect to these characters and share experiences with them in a way not too dissimilar to a connection with standard horror movie protagonists. Modern analog horror shifts this idea on its head by giving the viewer an experience that's almost entirely impersonal. Scattered, something the viewer wasn't even meant to see in all likelihood, recorded fragments of obscure home video memories that aren't ours to view. Fragments that we can only glean a sense of true meaning from by desperately grasping at every dangling straw we can. So, with that being said, how well does Local 58 execute these concepts? Let's take a look at the first canonical episode of the series, simply entitled Weather Service, to find out. I would posit that this short episode is a perfect window into the narrative this series is trying to deliver, and it's incredibly effective in its simplicity. The short sees us dropped into the middle of a broadcast on the Local 58 WCLV TV news station. The title cards revealing a broadcast schedule for the day. Suddenly, the shot cuts as we're plunged into an emergency alert system screen, informing us through piercing sirens that there's a meteorological event currently taking place, an event which people are advised not to look at with the naked eye. The alert, effective from that moment until sunrise, ends quietly as this cycle restarts. We're back at the broadcast screen, but something is different. The only block on the screen is set for 2:15 a.m. You can see for a split second that the block is named Blood of the... before the title crawl is interrupted momentarily by what seems to be another addendum, a civil danger alert issued by the County Weather Service? Again, but this time with a notably different background color, a sickly crimson instead of pitch black. It eerily calls out to the viewer, making it known that this event is safe to view. While this alone already seems a little suspect, we become completely privy to the fact that something is definitely wrong when the addendum outright tells us to
go outside and look up now.
We begin to piece together through the alerts that this broadcast is being tampered with, that we haven't been listening to just one narrative, but two that are fighting desperately to be heard over the other. Finally, After an uncomfortably long, lengthy back and forth between these two messengers, we get one final addendum from the county weather service.
It's in the light. The moon came in. She found me through the mirror. Moonlight white. White like eyes. Not light, but blood. I drown in him. If you're afraid, we will look together.
That's when we receive the last and first live action shot of this episode. A first person look up at the moon, seemingly shot on somebody's old VHS-C camcorder. The entire episode has been building up to this one moment, and you can absolutely tell. It's legitimately horrifying despite the fact that it shouldn't be. I would attribute the visceral horror of this shot partially to the fact that the only accompanying audio giving any sense of context to what you're looking at is and then the credits roll. The disquieting experience ending just as abruptly as it had started. All things considered, I would go out on a limb and say that this first episode is emblematic of Local 58's competency when it comes to delivering a really interesting horror narrative. It also makes phenomenal use of hyperdiegesis to rope new viewers into sticking around. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the term, hyperdiegesis describes the implication of a vast narrative in a piece of media where only bits and pieces, mere breadcrumbs compared to the bigger picture, are given. This first episode of Local 58 implies a larger narrative, but holds out on showing us that vast expanse, much to its benefit. A first episode of anything, especially a mystery/horror series, should always do three quintessential things. Give us the setting, establish the main conflict, and get the viewer to ask questions. Straub does an excellent job at all of these. I found myself watching it for the first time, having to ask myself, what is the moon doing to people who look at it? How long has this occurrence been happening? Or is this the first time? What's wrong with the moon? Or alternatively, what is the moon? The series, which is still running to this day, so you'd best hop on that train while you still can, elaborates on all of these questions in the episodes that follow. But what fun is there in spoilers? If you want to know,
Go outside and look up. If you're afraid, we'll look together.
in all seriousness, please check out the rest of this series. Chris Straub is a fantastic content creator and deserves all the praise in the world for it. I'll link his channel in the description below so that those of you who are considering investing yourselves in this masterfully crafted nightmare can do so. If you also want me to cover more things like this, be sure to write me a comment on your recommendations. I'm always open to them. Liking and subscribing helps me out a lot too, so if that's something you'd like, feel welcome. Lastly, Mr. Posh, if you're watching this, I hope to God I get an A because this shit took so much hard work. Anyways, love you, man. Peace out.